Hey guys, happy PRI week. It's PRI week. Welcome to another episode of Drag Illustrated's The Racing Business with me, Jason Dukes. As always, we're brought to you by Drag Illustrated. Thank you for being here for another week. This week, we have a really special guest, so I'm really excited to do that. But first of all, let me go ahead and just plug some PRI stuff for the week. With Drag Illustrated, it is the week of PRI, so remember this week, at PRI, Drag Illustrated has the Drag Illustrated After Hours, presented by Racers Club and El Bandito Yankee Tequila. And then also the 8th annual 30 Under 30 is this Friday. So be sure that you check both those things out, along with the booth, obviously, at PRI. You'll see a whole bunch of Drag Illustrated people at the show, including myself. So definitely look forward to seeing you there. This is where lots of business gets done. And this is a business podcast, so let's do that. All right. So today, our special guest is Corey Michalek from a whole bunch of different things. Michalek Brothers Racing, React 3. I keep saying 304. I don't know where I keep coming up with that, but React 104. And then also this Friday, I believe it's this Friday, they're coming out with a show and presentation proving grounds for the PDRA. If you don't know about Corey, take a look at some of the stuff he's done.
It's too easy to forget that the world is full of opportunity. Too often it's about what stands before us and not what stands within us. Inside each of us is a natural-born storyteller, waiting to be released. This is your platform. And this is React 104. React 104. Immersive cinematography and storytelling. Now full-time in 2023.
So we see the work, and as always on this show, it's about seeing the people behind the work. So I want to bring on Mr. Corey Michalek. Corey, how are you doing today, sir?
Excellent. Really appreciate you having me. Man, looking back at that reel there, it's like a flashback of memories of years past to put me in my first year full-time business of React 104. It's really gratifying, and to be able to come on here and kind of talk about the experiences is a cool opportunity. So I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. So as we do in all episodes of the show, we start out by all the things happening right now, and then we'll go back and tell the whole story. So tell us all the things going on in your world right now.
Yeah, it's very fragmented. As you mentioned, kind of have my hands in a few different pots at the moment between racing with my brother with our NHRA Top Alcohol Dragster team, as well as coming up about a month left on my first year full-time business with React 104. A lot of time spent at the racetrack this year between documenting for the NHRA, the PDRA, as you mentioned, which we've got a great project that hopefully we'll be able to talk about coming up for them later on this week at the banquet, as well as branching out into what I really want to tell the story of is the reason why React 104 was started at the racetrack, but where the end goal is actually away from it, and being able to work with the great people and the partners involved in the sport away from the racetrack. So a lot of stuff that's going on, very busy, but at the same time, very grateful for the opportunities that have come about so far.
Gotcha. You talked about the work with the PDRA. What sort of work did you do with the NHRA this year?
Yeah, so this is my second year with the NHRA in a pretty serious capacity. In the past, I had put together a few recap videos for events in Norwalk, Indianapolis, and Pomona for the NHRA. and more recently have been working with some of the individual teams to produce some, I would consider them pretty unique assets for their social media, primarily working with Steve Torrance and Ron Capps the past 2 years, but have had some great opportunities to do things with teams like Justin Ashley, Antron Brown, a few pro stock teams with the McGahays, Shane Tucker, and just some really cool stuff as far as being able to tell the stories of who these people are, who they have behind them, and what goes into a typical NHRA weekend.
Very cool. So tell us, where did it all start? Not just the business aspect. We want to know about your life. Tell us about who you are, and in your case, probably the whole family, because it's you, your brother, and the family.
Yeah. I've hinted at this a few times in the past, but growing up, I didn't have the traditional motorsports background that a lot of people do that are involved in the sport today that came from it from a young age. I was raised as a traditional three-sport athlete, stick and ball sports, in a small town where high school football was king, and really enjoyed that upbringing. But through that small town, it also produced the winningest IHRA top alcohol funny car driver of all time. And while I may not have been as interested in motorsports, my brother and my dad were, and they got connected with Mark Thomas, the driver of that car, and through the course of several outings, my brother ended up joining his pit crew. And at that time, I was an adrenaline junkie, but not from the same standpoint that I am now, where driving race cars where I get that fix. I loved amusement parks and roller coasters. So I was conned into going to a race up in Norwalk because it was only 20 minutes from Cedar Point, which is America's roller coaster capital. And thankfully, I did that though, because my first opportunity to go see the sport in person is what made me fall in love with it. As anybody knows about drag racing, unless you're there in person, you can't fully grasp the power and the sheer awe-inspiring, the magnitude of the show that comes from these vehicles. And then obviously, if you put it in the house that Vader built, it gets amplified to another level. So I'm sure that helped really set the hook even further. But through that, I started going to some of the events with my brother and my family to watch Mark compete. And in order for me to be involved, because I didn't have any type of a motorsports or mechanical background, I actually took a camera with me, and I started making what at today, if I look back, I cringe looking at them, but I made promotional videos for Mark and his team. And that was my way of feeling like I was contributing to the effort. I ended up going to college at Ohio University, where I got a degree in visual communications, specializing in interactive multimedia. So I was kind of, I guess, a Swiss Army knife or a generalist across all types of marketing and media creation. And during that time, I also was able to participate on Mark's pit crew and really begin to understand what it meant to participate at the highest levels of the sport, and what it took to be successful from a detailed perspective. So I was very appreciative of that opportunity. And upon graduating, we continued to pursue it, my brother and I, from a super comp perspective, but participated in what we consider our big break, which was the first ever Search for a Champion contest, where Champion Spark Plugs put out a call for entries for people to basically say why they are one of the next up and coming great racing teams that are out there. And thankfully, the entry for that was to put together a video. So we put together a video, and we won a $60,000 sponsorship that allowed us to take the next step in our racing careers, which was dipping our toes in the waters of the NHRA top alcohol dragster ranks and driving an A fuel dragster, where we at the beginning we split time back and forth between renting out a seat with the Dreer family. Had great success with them. I won a race. Kyle went to a final round. I went to another final round, and it proved to us that we could be successful in this class, which led us building our own top alcohol dragster team that we now campaign. We've had it since 2015, but have been racing since 2017. But during that time, I was also working at an advertising agency based out of New York. So I was living in New York as well as Columbus, Ohio during those times, and really beginning to get a grasp from a professional standpoint of not only understanding the technical skills it took to be proficient in my craft, but also being able to build relationships, carry on conversations with many different folks from different industries, understanding their needs from a marketing perspective, and really become confident in what I was doing from a professional standpoint, in addition to racing, where ultimately it led to me last year deciding after 12 years with the same company um, to take a shot and bet on myself to start React 104, which was previously just a small side gig, to give it a go full time this year to see if it would be sustainable. It has proven to be sustainable and then some, as well as been one of the most gratifying years of my life from a professional standpoint, to really prove that I think that this is something that drag racing needs. It is something that people from both inside the sport and outside the sport are able to really take advantage of and embrace, and then also be able to push themselves and their businesses even further. And to be able to play a role in that has been nothing short of amazing this first year. And I can't wait to see what 2024 brings.
Gotcha. So you covered a lot of the ground, if not all the ground there, but I'm going to go back and ask some questions along the way. So, you talked about the different sports as a kid, and you talked about how, going to the racetrack and feeling the power and being at awe, pretty much like changed your life or was a pivot point. But where were you headed before first going to the track? Like, where did you think you were going to end up?
Well, I originally thought that I was going to be a professional baseball player. My first glove that I bought was the size that was basically bigger than my whole body, and I was going to take that to the pros, but that didn't end up working out so well. So, I really didn't have a lot of direction in the beginning. I was thinking about either career in engineering. I knew that I enjoyed designing different things, but I just wasn't really kind of locked in yet. But it was that opportunity to feel as if, like, were we talking about sports and things like that, I enjoyed the team aspect of it. And then with that being able to translate into the team aspect of motorsports, it really gave me something to latch on to. And it's something that I still enjoy to this day, being able to contribute, whether it's in the driver's seat, whether it's turning a wrench, whether it's creating assets, whatever it is. Creating stuff that is contributing to something that is greater than yourself is always so much more gratifying when you're doing it with a team.
Gotcha. And talk about that process. You talked about how on the team you pretty much created your role as like, the videographer or the person that handles that stuff, and that's a job that didn't necessarily exist. Like most of the work that I do, it's with visionary people. Like, so a lot of the work that they do, it doesn't already exist. Like they have to create it.
Right.
But for some of the people that are watching, that don't really know where they fit or looking to create where they fit, what sort of advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think that one of the few downfalls that we can all recognize with the sport of drag racing is the old hurry up and wait aspect of it, where it was one of those things where I would be there and you ride the roller coaster of adrenaline and emotion during the runs and in between rounds and stuff like that. But during those valleys where you're just kind of sitting around waiting for that next run to come around, I found myself almost getting a little bit restless around what can I do to stay busy to kind of help pass the time. And then when we took that camera to the racetrack for the first time, and I noticed that Mark always had really nice hero cards. Their team was professionally presented and stuff like that. I wanted to find a way to help push that even further. Where at that point, it's crazy to say this, but at that time, you were unique as if you were a racer and you had a website, or if you were able to push anything from a digital perspective. So really try to do that, as well as create some marketing assets for him as he was pursuing new sponsors. And that was just, I think, a way to really just kind of first time dip my toes into it. And for somebody else, there's so many teams out there, from the professional ranks all the way down to people that are just getting started in the sport, that need these types of services. You've seen a business that is just flourishing as far as new people coming into the sport, where different teams have someone that controls all their social media, when previously it was a driver at the end of the day said, hey, we went 5:33 at 266. Our next run is at 9 p.m. tomorrow, whatever it is. Those types of things are where people are always craving more content and being able to see the behind the scenes. And the majority of the younger generation that is getting into the sport today knows no world other than having a phone in their hands or creating content and documenting those types of things. And they're the prime target audience to be able to make the biggest impact and the next impact in the sport.
Yeah. And so what advice would you have to drivers or team managers out there? Because, I've been on teams of just things where it's like, well, there's not really a role for me, but I'm just going to make some stuff off in the side. And there have been some people who like, they foster that. And then there's some people who are like, dude, we don't know what you're doing, but stop doing it and don't ever do it again. And, and then in the long run, it's like, man, that's sort of where the world ended up going. But what sort of advice do you have for people like Mark? Like Mark, it sounds like Mark just let you go with it, but what sort of advice do you have to teams, drivers, team managers?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where a lot of times I don't know if there's actually many teams out there that don't feel like they need that type of stuff. And it's one of those the squeaky wheel gets the grease type situations where if someone is able to come in and show, hey, here's what I can offer. I just want to be a part of the team. I want to be involved in some aspect. Drag racing is one of the most welcoming communities I think that I've ever been a part of. Yeah, there's the competition aspect of it. Some of the teams can butt heads and things like that. But as far as embracing the outside world, whether it's fans or people that want to become involved in the sport, there's an open door policy with a lot of these different teams, especially like I said, at some of these more regional and sportsman level teams that really want to begin to push themselves to have that more professional online presence. Money makes these race cars run, and the more that you can get yourself out there and be noticed, the better opportunity that you have. I mean, I watch the stuff on the West Buck show all the time, and the guys are constantly preaching that you need to put yourself out there. You need to be able to embrace being seen in order to be able to be recognized as someone that is worthwhile as an investment for anyone wanting to invest in the sport. And if somebody's willing to come in and help you with that, I think that that's an open opportunity that people are really trying to welcome to help themselves out.
Gotcha. You talked that one of the next steps in your path was the scholarship that you won with the video program. Um, Tell us about what you learned in that. Like, I mean, it sounds like you guys got the assignment extra right and got extra credit on it because of your video production skills. But tell us about some of the things that you learned during that process.
Yeah, that one was really interesting because it was the first time that anything like that had really been done. The contest from there really took off the next few years. I think the first year there was like 350 entrants or whatever. So it was still great to win that, but the barrier for entry after that went through the roof. Where the next couple years it was well over 1,000 teams across all different disciplines of motorsports were entering. But I think that what we were able to do was come in and showcase a level of production value that was a little bit elevated compared to the majority of the others. We told a really compact but also powerful story of where we began in the sport, where we currently are, and where we envision ourselves. And then also just showed that we are someone that would be able to really represent a brand, and especially one of notoriety like Champion, in a very professional manner. And we used essentially, I think it was a 2-month voting process that happened. We used our social media to create different types of assets every single day rather than just spamming people saying like, hey, don't forget to vote and things along those lines. We kept people engaged with different types of trivia, some contests, etc. So it showed that we put a lot of time and effort into not just being after the sponsorship, but also activating the community. And that's gone, I think that went the longest way in really kind of separating ourselves outside of just having a really nice video.
Nice. And then once you won the scholarship, what were some of the things that you had to do for Champion and for some of the partners then?
So at that point, actually, the requirements were actually pretty slim, and other than branding on the vehicle itself, we tried our best to over deliver. We actually took it upon ourselves after winning to set up a meeting going up to Southfield, just outside of Detroit, to meet with each of the different executives within Champion to sit down and kind of further reiterate what our goals were for moving forward. We took this not only from winning that contest, but also extended it into a multi-year partnership with them after that, even while they were continuing to award new racers sponsorship money for the additional contest that went on from there. So we tried to really follow through, not only just for the winning of the initial payout, if you will, but showing how we could be a preferred partner through the years and continuing to deliver long after the initial investment was made.
Gotcha. And was that we haven't necessarily talked about the driving part of it, but was that the first time for you guys in the driver's seat, or how did that work out?
So we had our super comp car at that point, but in order to allow us to ascend into the higher level of the category that we still remain at today, that was truly the catalyst that made it happen. The alcohol class is nowhere near the expense to run a pro class, but at the same time, for two kids that were basically fresh out of college and in their infancy and of their professional careers, that was a pretty substantial investment and risk as well to take to be able to get in there. And had we not had that funding come through, I'm hopeful that we would have made it to where we are today, but I don't think it would be as accelerated as it was. It truly, I wouldn't say open the door, it blew open the door for us to get into a quality car. We really wanted to just, at that time, it wasn't about chasing points or anything. Um, Prove to ourselves that this was a level that we can compete in from a driving standpoint. We've done it plenty of times. We've won world championships as crew members in the alcohol classes, but never had done it with our right foot, if you will. And to have that early on success because we were able to afford to get into a quality seat, that really sealed the deal to push us forward to where we are today.
Gotcha. You bring up a point there I didn't forget it, but just want to bring it back up that you were a college student during most of this. And I work over a bunch of different industries, and all industries are fighting over talent. What about the racing industry kept your attention? Because you're a super talented person, and in college, and in college, everyone's trying to get you to go in different directions, and all industries are trying to do the talent grab. Like, one, what is it about the industry that kept you in, and what sort of advice do you have to the industry to recruit the next generation of talented folks?
Yeah, I didn't really when I was in school, I don't really actually really feel like I fit in what I was trying to do. Um, it was kind of a unique scenario. All of the stuff that I was creating was different than what everybody else was doing. A lot of people wanted to go work with some more traditional brands and go down the standard marketing path. And um, I was talking about race cars and just how much larger than life these things, trying to find a way to, which is kind of what led into React 104. How do you visualize what these things are when you can't ever do them justice with a phone screen or a TV screen, wherever it is that you're consuming the content. So yeah, when I was in school, I was doing projects where whether it was like an audio production class or it was something for just general interactive design or videos, I was trying to translate the experience at the track through those mediums. And a lot of people, including my professors, just, I don't think they understood. Like, what are you trying to do here? But at the same time, I just loved everything about the sport. I loved the competition part of it. I loved the team aspect of it, like we talked about. And at that point, I still think it's untapped, but it was extremely untapped in terms of this type of approach and vision for elevating the way that you tell stories. Like, there's no replacing the old days of like the Diamond P broadcast and all that type of stuff. Those will always have a place in people's hearts. But like, when I was in school, that was when Rebellis was like started to change the game with photography and how you visualize the cars on the track and just these different formats than anybody had ever done. And I was like, I mean, there's got to be a way to do that with video and bring in this just sort of immersive experience that you get at the racetrack. I don't think the job's anywhere near done, but I think I've been able to chip away at it a little bit at a time. And the only way to do that was just to kind of, I guess, take a new path, because nobody, like I said, was trying to do anything similar in any of my classes, which was cool, but also at times a little bit discouraging. So I would guess, to your question, for advice for people, just because nobody else is doing it, if you're really set on, just stick with it. You can blaze your own trail, and hopefully in the long run too, it's going to be something that people look back and say that man, that was the way to do it, and I want to do something similar too.
Gotcha. So, you talk about not necessarily fitting in the college experience. What was the corporate experience for like for you?
Same deal, man. I lived in New York City for 3 years, and same deal. I don't think anybody understood what drag racing was there. Shoot, when I was driving I think one of my favorite factoids was first time driving an A fuel car. I won the race in Charlotte. It was the four wide nationals um, in 2014. And one of the things they said on the ESPN broadcast was that I didn't even own a car. I didn't at that point because I was living in New York and I could just walk everywhere. So that's how like detached I was from the racing environment, where I didn't have a garage, I didn't have a personal vehicle or anything along those lines. But at the same time, while I wasn't getting the experience from a motorsports perspective, I was getting inserted into conversations, meetings, business opportunities, presentations, etc., that I would have never otherwise been exposed to if I didn't go out of my comfort zone to go live out there for a few years, helping a few guys get the agency started before I moved back to Ohio. And although it was a different perspective, still was surrounded by really, really smart people that all wanted to help grow a business, which showed me essentially how for what I'm trying to do with React 104 today. And I latch on and look back at that information that I learned from those experiences every day, basically.
Very cool. So it was a startup agency.
Yeah, it was myself and then three other guys that were previously living in New York. Two of them went to Ohio University with me, so I stayed in contact with them. Moved out there for a few years, and then upon really starting to get serious in our racing careers, I moved back to Ohio at that point. And when we did that, we opened another office in Ohio at that point, so I could continue doing what I was doing. So extremely grateful for the experiences that I got from them, as well as the trust that they had when I wanted to take a chance on the racing front to open another office and continue to get that great background experience that I'm really tapping into with React 104 now.
Gotcha. And what industries did you guys work in? And were there any racing connections there?
So we worked across everything. So from high fashion to consumer goods, the food and dining space. After we won the champion contest, we actually stole the business from the agency that was doing it then.
Oh,
So
cool.
got to do a lot of work for what was at that point, it was Federal Mogul, then it was Federal Mogul Motor Parts. Now it is Drive, I believe is the name of it. So got to do a lot of stuff from an automotive standpoint there. Was one of the main creatives on that account for a long time. But the diversity of working with startups that were coming into the fray, so branding them from the ground up and doing their go-to-market strategies, all the way through working with some of the most recognizable brands out there today, between like a Chick-fil-A, a GQ, et cetera. Leading projects with those teams was just such a great experience to feel very well-rounded and just understand the breadth of the different types of work that were out there from a marketing perspective.
Gotcha. And so then React 104 was next.
It was, yeah. So in 2018 is when I got started with it. We had basically a year-long break with our racing program to take care of a few things back at home. And in order to, I guess, scratch my itch to be at the racetrack, I wasn't working for a team or anything at that point. We had a really great relationship with Bill Bader, and I reached out to him and said, "Hey, would you mind if I came up to your event and put together essentially like a recap of the 2018 event with you?" And he said, "Yeah, would love to have that." And I took this was actually the first time I'd ever shot anything NHRA related. I participated in NHRA. I'd watched NHRA for a long time, but anything that I'd created previously to that was for the IHRA. So I said, this has got to be next level. It's got to be like a coming out party, if you will. And even though it was a side gig, I wanted people to recognize that this could be a legit offering for moving forward. So thankfully, that piece went off without a hitch. It was a big deal because it launched on the 4th of July, and there's no more patriotic racing venue in the country, probably in the world, than Summit Motorsports Park. So that really started to catch some people's attention, and people started asking, "What is React 104? Is this something that could ever be a full-time gig?" It made me start to question as well. I was still very much enjoying my gig on the agency side of things, but I didn't have the confidence that until basically last year, that it could be something that was sustainable from a full-time perspective. Didn't have the contacts just by myself that I had outside of the agency. So I kind of muddled, I wouldn't say behind the scenes, but very sporadically here and there on the side of my full-time job and racing, doing some projects for few teams, as well as a few events before last year. I really felt like I had enough that was built up to say, let's give this a shot for at least a year full time, and then we'll go from there and see, and we'll reevaluate essentially a month from now whether it is going to be sustainable. I feel confident saying a month early that we're in a good spot.
Good deal. So this is this is an extremely real life show where we're here to inspire people, to engage people, to
Yeah.
educate, to motivate. You talked about going home for some family matters or whatnot. You don't have to get into it. You can if you want to, though. But this is a very human show, right? Like Amanda Busick talked about some of her stuff. Paul Lee had a heart attack. Lyle Barnett had his accident. Obviously, me.
Yeah.
Left Gateway when my dad got sick, and I had to move back home to New Jersey. So I was also a racing fish out of water in New Jersey. But you sort of talked about how you dealt with that whatever it is happened, and then but you transitioned to Summit Motorsports Park. A lot of times when something happens in people's lives, like it's like that give up moment. Like what sort of advice do you have to people?
Yeah, so it was a pretty crazy situation between the 2017 and 2018 season. My brother and his wife were expecting their first child, and through a very unfortunate event, my brother's wife passed away during the birth of that child. So we were in a little bit of a scramble mode at that point in terms of trying to figure out that situation at home and raising a child. My brother will be the first one to admit this, that at that point he was fully invested in that, but in the birth of the child. But when you think about a traditional birth, you think that the mother is the most prepared, and he would fully admit that she was. So when that happened, it was a big time wake up call as far as we need to reprioritize everything in life to make sure that this kid has the best upbringing possible. When he got out of the NICU, he had a very extended stay there because it was pretty early in the pregnancy still. Thankfully, he's fully healthy today, and one of the nicest and most interactive kids that I've ever met in my entire life. But at that point, racing really took a back seat. And for the foreseeable future after that, we were really fully focused on that. We didn't put any thought or effort into the race car. But when things kind of slowed down a little bit, I needed an opportunity just to disconnect and go back to what we did. And as a family, what we did was we raced. So getting the opportunity through Bill, who was one of the most supportive people at that time as well, who came down for the funeral, came for the celebration of life, offered anything he possibly could. Actually, at that point in time, Bill was actually the main sponsor on our race car. So he was very involved and invested in everything that was going on. So when he accepted the call and the idea or proposition of creating some work for him, that kind of kick-started everything that we were doing from a racing perspective for me, from both the work and racing perspective. But Kyle was able to come up for a couple of those days as well and just kind of feel a little bit of a sense of normalcy. So as crazy as everybody else likes to talk about, like racing's a big family, and it sounds kind of cliche. I mean, it was what really helped to kind of push things through what was one of the darker times in life, and really kind of reinvigorated and kept everybody together when there was an opportunity to get back out there. To this day, we have probably an obnoxiously large contingent of people that comes to every single one of our races, but it's people that support us, and it's people that's our family, and you can't ask for anything better than that.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks. Thank you. I didn't know about that. And thank you for sharing that. My family has gone through something similar. And then the Drag Illustrated family is currently going through that, something similar with Brandon Mudd. So we're also thinking about you, Brandon, and also thinking about you and your family, Corey. So then you start React 101. Sorry, doesn't have to be that segue. You can talk about whatever you want to, but if we go directly to the React 104, I'm sorry, I can't get the numbers straight. I've given you every number except 104.
It's all good.
So I'll call it React, and everyone knows that I'm talking about React 104.
Yes.
So what was the first lesson that you learned with React 104?
Well, I think that thankfully a lot of the lessons I had taken from the previous role that I had with the agency, but it just kind of a lot of things just get amplified when you, for the lack of a better term, are a one-man band. At the very beginning of this, I've aligned myself thankfully throughout this year with some really talented people from a contractor standpoint that help, whether it's from a filming standpoint or an editing standpoint. But when the reality sets in that you are the only person that is responsible for your salary, there's no such thing as PTO. You're also the one that's doing the books and setting all those types of things. It's invigorating when you're able to show that there's some stuff going to the bank account, but it's also one of those things that can be very sobering in terms of what it's going to take to be able to hit your goals every single month. Um, I had a great appreciation for what it took to build the agency that we did, where I was at previously. But when you are the sole person doing it without the help of the partners that I previously did, it's a different level. Everything's the highs are higher and the lows are lower, but at the same time, it makes it a lot easier to get up in the morning when you're consistently working on things that you wanted, the things that you went after, and the types of businesses that you secured. Like it's crazy to think that like get people are flying me to go to Sonoma to film Ron Capps or to shoot for Sean Langdon or Steve Torrance, whatever it is. Like I I would pay to go to those races previously just to go watch and have a relationship with those guys. And for them to think high enough of the types of work that is being produced it's humbling, but it's also so exciting because I'm like, "Ah, man, I'm very proud of what we've done, but I know that we can continue to do even better stuff." So um, while there's been some lessons here and there, thankfully to this point, there haven't been any major hiccups. I know that there will probably be some at some point, but it's just continuing to stay kind of steadfast and laser focused on what your overall goals are, which I would really recommend making sure that when you start and then at least on an annual basis, you're sitting down and taking the time to reevaluate those, make sure they're actually jotted down that you can reference back to and split it between larger long-term goals that you're going to have to really work towards, but also ones that are a little bit more bite-sized so that you can get that sort of hit of dopamine saying like, all right, I can cross that one off and continue to feel like you're making progress versus just a continuous uphill struggle.
And what's your? I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what's your process like? Do you have a team of people that you speak with? Do you do it on your own? Do you do it? What's sort of the cadence of your checking in?
Yeah, so I kind of vet my ideas through a handful of different people. I still stay in contact with a lot of the people that I previously worked with, just because they've been through the fire, if you will, with me in the past. But on the side of where the other side of things where I'm at right now, I've established a really great relationship with Natalie Torrance, Steve Torrance's wife, who runs her own company as well, was a startup a few years ago. Now is a full-time business that employs multiple people within the racing space. So to be able to kind of pick her brain on some of the things that she went through and the adjustments that she's made in the same space that I'm playing a lot of the majority of my business time in has helped quite a bit. And then in addition to that, I also just run a lot of things through my brother as well, not only from a family standpoint and just having that type of relationship, but in pure coincidence, neither one of us had alerted each other. Essentially, a few weeks before I announced I was going full time with React 104, he was also moving on from a place of, I think, 15 years of employment that he was at, purchasing a machine shop. So he is now a small business owner as well. So it was really exciting and encouraging at the same time. But then when we got to race season this year, like, oh my gosh, when are we actually going to race? We got so much things that are going on, but hopefully in time, this is something that will also create additional flexibility. As you see, drag racing is a place of obviously great wealth, not only from the race teams, but a lot of people are also self-funded. That is by no means the goal. We want to continue to be aligned with different partners and help create return on investment for them. But at the same time, to be wealthy in time is also a big thing. So being able to create that flexibility through our own businesses would be a great thing.
Nice. Who are some of the partners in your current racing program, and what are some of the things that you're working on with them?
Yeah, so we've had a great stable of partners through the years, going back through Champion and then aligning with a few of their other brands like Felpro, Sealed Power, and Speed Pro. We then evolved to bring on a primary partner from a trucking and logistics company called the Keenan Advantage Group. We worked with them for a couple years. With Bill Bader, we promoted his marketing company called Energize for a handful of events, which was just so much fun to be able to work with him and race at some of his events, to see the pride that he has in his facility then get leveled up to another level, seeing his own race car that was out there and just almost being giddy about it was really cool. But more recently, we've been with a company called Fun That Flip that is now rebranded to Upright for the past 4 years, and had some great associate sponsorship with things like SJK Machine, safety support. So it's really kind of all over the place of both endemic and non-endemic brands to introduce people that have never been involved with the sport, seeing the way that they're able to do business at the racetrack as well as recruit. Has been really fulfilling and validating at the same time, that even though we may not be in one of the quote unquote premier classes within the sport, and don't get the same amount of TV coverage, which I know that a lot of the nitro teams are able to sell some deals through, that we can still create a really tangible return on investment. And that's something that we can continue to put in the back pocket as we continue to pursue other people.
Cool. You in the beginning, you sort of teased us about the original purpose of React, and React 786, no, React 104. You told us about some of the original purpose, and that it doesn't stop in motorsports. Can you tell us both those, the original purpose and where it's going from here?
Yeah, so I truly enjoy being able to kind of show new ways to, or bring new ways to view the sport through video, and creating different types of pieces about the experience at the racetrack. But the longer term goal for the brand is to um, take the relationships that were built through these teams and their partners and extend them away from there. And it's begun to bear some fruit. So, for instance, in the partnership with Natalie Torrance, we were doing a little bit of work for Clita Motorsports, but that has transitioned into one of the larger, probably if not the largest projects that was done this year, which was for Coletta Air, a massive recruiting campaign for new pilots, maintenance technicians, people to go to their technical school. So to be able to extend to the partners within the racing communities is where the ultimate goal is. By no means will there ever be a departure from the motorsports aspect of it. Still need to get your hands dirty in that, and really continue to drive that business. But hopefully being able to extend this. So we've done work with Capco and a lot of stuff with Bernie's Speed Shop with Josh Hart. Push it into the things like the Matco tools of the world, the Napa Auto Parts, et cetera. Those are where the ultimate goals are. And it all starts with getting traction with the people that are working with those brands on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's almost like a B2B practicing what we all preach.
Correct.
It's like, guys, just come to the racetrack. There's so much work. There's so much work and so much business at the racetrack. And it sounds like that's one of the things that you're doing.
Yeah, it's like a backdoor strategy, because I know so many agencies and stuff that are getting an opportunity to work with the Kevin Harvicks of the world and the Ron Capses, et cetera. And it's because they were previously aligned with Napa, or they were previously aligned with Busch, where I'm kind of going the opposite direction, where I'm starting with the drivers and then getting those intros. I mean, you can't have a better facilitator for those conversations than the people that are truly representing those brands on a daily basis. So thankfully to this point, in time, it has been validated that that is a successful strategy, at least from the type of work that I've been doing.
Yeah. Well, and also just there's no better venue than the racetrack
Yes,
too. I mean, it's a place where, like you talked about the power and sheer awe, like everyone's sort of
absolutely.
on a high in that environment. Well, we've got to the end of the interview part, but we end every session with put up your dukes, the 13 questions rule, 1 minute each.
Yep.
Look, you're ready to put your dukes up, aren't you?
Right, roll.
All right, let's put up your dukes. Cool. So, Corey, what is the strength of Corey? What's the strength of React? Golly, I can't.
Not
It's
even a
clear.
tongue twister. It's just
Remembering
I don't even know what to call it.
remembering numbers is not my strength. What's the strength of Corey? What's the strength of React 104? What's the strength of the industry?
Yeah, I think the strength of me and 10 React 104 is I am somebody that has been involved in the sport itself for well over a decade. I live it, I breathe it, and being able to tie that back into the skills that I've learned through a long career to this point within the professional marketing industry. Um, Mating those two together, I feel like I have a unique approach. I still live and breathe this sport. I dream in drag racing, and to be able to help tell those stories, I think is a unique aspect that a lot of people that come into wanting to create videos and stuff along those lines in the sport have not previously been exposed to.
How about the weakness?
I think you flip that around, that I think I've been so ingrained in it and want to continue to innovate on it, that one of the things I'm really continuing to kind of challenge myself on is finding some new ways to represent things and the details of showing the sport, whether it's in the pits, in the staging lanes, on the track, etc. You go to every single racetrack and they're all the same. It's a different location, but it's a quarter mile, eighth mile, whatever it is, and it can become monotonous. So I don't think that I fully found the best way to continue doing that throughout full season, but in 2024, I'm going to do everything I can to do it.
Biggest opportunity?
Biggest opportunity is definitely right now there's just so many different forms of drag racing that are going on. I know that we've primarily focused on NHRA, PDRA, and a little bit of IHRA here, but it's not only just the biggest opportunity for me, but people that are like me and want to help portray the sport in the best light possible. That you can go to any racetrack, whether it's a national event or the smallest local Friday evening bracket race that's going on. If you've got a camera, if you got a phone, whatever it is, you can tell a story. And the more stories that we can get out there, the quicker this sport becomes, I think, what we all want it to be.
Biggest threat?
Biggest threat. That's a good question. I think it kind of goes back to what we actually just touched on very briefly earlier. The biggest threat would be if people don't feel like their story is worth being told. A lot of people out there say, well, if I'm not the John Force or whatever, like people don't recognize who I am, why would I put a camera in my face and try and tell what's going on? And not only that, but not telling just, if you're only telling the good stories, you're not telling the full picture. Drag racing is really hard. And if you actually see what is some of the most engaged content that is out there, it's people that are failing or working through something. And you're not going to take a step down by showing somebody that you're having a hard time with something. If anything, it's going to grow your support and people are going to root for you even harder.
Most overrated part about being you?
I think people really enjoy some of the final products of the videos and stuff that are put out, but it's really overrated just how much time and effort goes into some of them. The detail that goes into some of the videos that are put together is almost asinine at times. But if you really want to separate yourself and create something that's unique that you're not seeing anywhere else, that's the type of investment that needs to go into it.
Yeah, I'm a New Jersey, New Yorker also. So, well, not also, but you know what I mean. I'm from there, and one of the things I would always remember is just being in New York, where it's like, oh, all of a sudden you're on a film set, and it's like, then you go watch the movie and you can't wait to see, like, you just watch 12
Yeah.
hours of filming and you go watch the
Right.
movie and it's like 13 seconds in the movie and you're
If
like,
that.
wait, they did 12
Yep.
hours of shooting for 13 seconds? Wow.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Most underrated.
Underrated. I've heard a lot of people say something about like you shouldn't work where you play. I can see where that can kind of maybe come into play in some aspects, but I think it's actually, if anything, people are underselling it. I've enjoyed so much mixing my passions, and yeah, there's some days that are really long, and the last thing I want to do is sort through 6 hours of footage of a previous race, but getting the opportunity to be fully invested in something that you love, I think is not embraced as much as possible, just because people are worried that they're going to get potentially burn out on it. I have, it's only been a year. I can admit that as far as doing it full time. But when Pomona ended, that was my 35th event of the year that I went to. And I was like, man, I can't wait till the next one. And I can't believe that I got to wait 3 months till I go again. So if it's something that you're really passionate about and you want to give it a shot, I'd encourage you to do so.
Biggest mental hurdle.
The mental hurdle is the one where in 2018, when I first convinced myself that I wasn't ready to start, I think I could have been ready to start if I would have really pursued it. It took me 4 or 5 years before I finally had the confidence to do it. And if I would have just challenged myself and taken that risk, it may not have happened as quickly, but I'm confident that I could have been able to do it. And if anybody else in the same position, take a chance on yourself. There's a good chance it's going to work out.
Last thing for you to say to someone younger than you, the generation coming up behind you.
I agree with everything. We're on a Drag Illustrated platform here. I agree with everything that Westbuck says when he always says that we're in the golden age of drag racing right now. There's going to be people that continuously, I'm sure that in 20 years, reference back to 2023 and say that was the best time of drag racing. But there's always something that's good that's going on in the sport. And there's opportunities for you to be involved. Just because some generation or someone is telling you that it's not as good as it once was, or the product is not as entertaining as they believe it could be, etc., take it as an opportunity to be the one that helps prove them wrong, and really dive in head first, because there's so many opportunities, whether you want to be involved from a team standpoint, in the marketing side of things, working for an actual sanctioning body, whatever. There are so many opportunities to make a difference, and the people that dive in head first are the ones that always do so.
How about last word for the older generation, the folks who came before you?
Appreciate the groundwork that was laid. As I mentioned before, like seeing some of the initial work from the Diamond P stuff, and then also even just outside of the sport, I got inspired by things like NFL films, and just being able to cinematically tell the stories of these heroes that are involved piloting these unfathomable machines. That's what inspired me to really kind of push even further outside of just that initial, I'm taking a camera to a racetrack to try and keep myself occupied and somewhat make a difference. So I'm glad that this sport was available when, even though I was a late bloomer getting involved in it, that it was in such a good spot and there were so many opportunities for people to be involved. It's still, in my opinion, the most accessible motorsport that's out there, whether you want to compete or you just want to go and have a good time and introduce people to it. Continue to embrace the idea of the open pit concept, and just being a very welcoming community. And I think that we'll continue to be in a great spot.
How about to your peers?
Peers, I invite more people to continue to do what's going on. I think that there is a sort of a renaissance that's going on from within the media side of things in the sport. The media rooms in the PDRA and the NHRA that I'm involved with, for the most part, are so collaborative and so welcoming, and people just want to create the best work possible to showcase what's going on in the sport. You can't get on to social media this day without being bombarded with people's latest and greatest, and I think that that's a great thing. That's something that I get inspired by other people. I appreciate the feedback that I get from other people, and it's something that we continue to push each other, and I hope that that continues to be the case for years to come.
Last question is, how does this community support you? What's your request?
I would love to just continue to be able to create the types of work that we are. I think that a lot of people are starting to embrace the idea of more curated content in the right settings. Nothing will ever replace showing the national event record run on a video, or showing some gnarly wreck that someone was able to walk away from. But now that we're able to have these platforms for longer content like a YouTube and things like that, seeing some of the response and the excitement that comes from seeing a more well-produced piece that we're trying to do with React 104 is great. So if you see those, obviously, the more eyeballs that get on it, the more easily it gets distributed. And opportunities too, where if you are a team or if you're a sanctioning body and you see the value in this, being able to reach out to people like myself or some of the peers that I can help connect you with to invest in these types of things just grows the sport even more. Really looking forward to being able to showcase the piece this week at the PDRA event, where I think that's going to really showcase the sport in a way that a lot of people have never seen it, not only in person at the banquet, but also afterwards, that will continue to show why the PDRA is the fastest and the best door slammer racing in the world. We want to do that outside of there as well. So when those opportunities come by, don't ever feel hesitant to reach out.
Gotcha. We'll obviously have some links down below and everywhere here in the social media, but where can people find you?
Yeah, so on basically all the popular social media platforms, we have a React 104 presence. And then if you need to have a more direct way to contact, react104.com has a contact form that is on there. So any types of questions, feel free to reach out. And then for people that are also looking to get into this line of work, it's looking very promising as far as 2024 is concerned, that I will be hiring a few people as well. So be on the lookout for some job postings there to become part of the team, which will be really exciting.
There it all is, guys. Corey Michalek, React 104. I need to make sure that I get it, mostly because I don't want to be disrespectful, mostly because I respect the heck out of what you're doing.
I really appreciate that. And thank you for what you're doing as well, as far as giving people like myself a platform to kind of tell the story of how the business came into place. But also for anybody that's looking in, I think this would have been really empowering for me to look back on, or to look at, when I was in the process of trying to decide, do I have what it takes to succeed as a business owner? Do I have what it takes to succeed in the sport of drag racing and trying to make a living in there? To see the different perspectives from everyone between track owners, sponsors, racers themselves, etc. There are unique threads of conversation that come out of those, but there's also commonalities and two that you can kind of pick and choose between the different interviews. So being able to see where you align and kind of what would be your best path forward. This has been such a great platform for that. So thank you for that. And I look forward to seeing what else you continue to bring to it.
Thank you. I appreciate that a ton. And guys, remember what Corey said about that he probably would have started his business a couple years earlier. So please use this interview and use some of the other interviews to go ahead and do that and just take that step forward and do what you want to do, what you're sent here to do. So thank you so much, Corey. I got to do some plugging before we go. And also thanks everyone for joining us again for another episode. Have a great PRI week. I mean, this is the week where a whole bunch of business gets done. So make sure that you get business done. Make sure that you connect with Corey and all the other guests that have been on the show, and support all the things that Drag Illustrated is doing this week. The Drag Illustrated After Hours presented by Racers Club, and also El Bandito Yankee Tequila. And then, of course, we have the next generation of folks coming up. We always put up your Dukes. We always make sure that we talk about with advice or last words to the younger generation. And we have the 8th annual Drag Illustrated 30 Under 30. So for 8 years, Wes and the team has been doing that. So be sure to support all the things going on at PRI this week and get some business done. Thank you again for joining us. For our guests, Corey Michalek, and our executive producer, JT Murder Tundra Hudson. I'm Jason Dukes. It's been a pleasure. See you next week.
Thank you.